The morning sun filtered through the gauzy white curtains as Charlotte Evans stirred beneath the silk sheets. It was their anniversary, 7 years married. She smiled to herself, stretching, already imagining the romantic dinner Daniel promised. He had been acting distant lately, yes, but that was just stress, she convinced herself. He was always under pressure with work. Charlotte padded downstairs to find a small white box sitting on the kitchen counter. The note taped to it read, "Wear this tonight. Dinner at 7. Love you always, D." Inside the box lay a delicate silver necklace with a charm shaped like a key. Her heart fluttered. Daniel still had his moments, still knew how to surprise her. By evening, she was dressed in a pale blue satin dress, the necklace glinting at her collarbone. Daniel had arranged for a private table at a rooftop restaurant overlooking the Thames. Candlelight, wine, the works. For a moment the doubts faded. "You look beautiful," Daniel said smoothly, taking her hand. "You too," she smiled, though something inside her prickled. His gaze lingered just a moment too long on his phone screen. He turned it face down on the table. As they ate, she noticed it again, a vibration. He silenced it quickly. "Work?" she asked. He hesitated, then nodded. "Client emergency." Ignore it. But she couldn't. Something about his demeanor had changed in the last few months. Longer work trips. Unexplained absences. And that perfume smell on his shirts that wasn't hers. As the dessert arrived, Daniel's phone lit up again. She caught the name on the screen before he could flip it over. Ava Saunders. Charlotte's stomach tightened. That name. She had seen it once months ago on a strange bank transfer. When she asked, Daniel brushed it off. A colleague's reimbursement. Now it made her hands tremble. "Daniel, who's Ava?" she asked softly, trying to keep her voice even. He looked up, eyes sharp for just a fraction of a second. Then the mask returned. "She's a client." "A client who calls during our anniversary dinner?" His jaw tensed. "Charlotte, can we not do this tonight?" And just like that, the illusion shattered. She smiled tightly, nodding, and excused herself to the restroom. But instead of heading to the toilets, she walked straight out of the restaurant into the night air, her heart pounding. Back home, she opened her laptop, her fingers shaking as she typed the name. Ava Saunders, London. The first result made her breath catch. Ava Saunders, Year 3 teacher at Millgate Primary. Mother of 2. A photo popped up. Daniel stood beside her at a school fair, his arm around a little boy and girl. Charlotte couldn't breathe. Her husband had a second family. Charlotte stared at the screen, frozen in place. The image of Daniel with that other woman, Ava, and 2 small children burned into her mind like a scar that would never fade. The picture was time-stamped from 3 months ago. That was the same weekend Daniel told her he had a financial conference in Birmingham. She remembered it well. He had come home exhausted, shirt wrinkled and strangely distant. The betrayal stung, but it was the children that shook her most. They were smiling. One had Daniel's nose, the other his eyes. The boy looked to be around 9 and the girl maybe 6 or 7. How long had this been going on? She clicked through more photos, then found a blog. A school's parent-teacher newsletter. Ava Saunders was listed as a Year 3 teacher and had recently organized a family picnic event. The caption read, "Ms. Saunders and her partner Daniel joined the school community for a lovely afternoon in the park." The picture beside it was even worse than the first. Daniel wasn't just there, he looked happy. Happier than Charlotte had seen him in years. It was a knife to the gut. Tears welled in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not yet. Not until she knew everything. She pulled out an old box from their hallway closet, the one Daniel never let her organize. Inside were scattered papers, business cards, old receipts. She rifled through them with purpose now. Her hands found a printed receipt from a toy store 2 towns away, not near his office, not near their home. Charlotte typed the address into Google Maps. It was 15 minutes from Millgate Primary School. She leaned back, staring at the screen. The coincidences had become a pattern. And the pattern screamed one truth. Daniel had been living a double life. Charlotte wasn't sure how long she sat there. When she finally stood up, her body felt heavier than it had an hour ago. She needed proof. Solid, undeniable proof. Something that would shut down whatever story Daniel would concoct when confronted. Because she knew him, slick, practiced, always one step ahead. She copied the photos to a hidden USB drive. She took screenshots of emails, payment histories, anything remotely suspicious. And then she made a plan. Tomorrow, while Daniel was at work, she would visit Millgate Primary. See Ava with her own eyes. Maybe even see the kids. She didn't know what she expected to find. Maybe confirmation, maybe closure. But she needed to feel the truth, not just see it on a screen. That night, Daniel returned late. He kissed her on the forehead like he always did and went straight to the shower. Charlotte stared at the back of his head the whole time, wondering how someone could fake love so convincingly for so long. As he undressed, she noticed something she had missed before. A child's drawing slipped from his coat pocket. It was a picture of a man holding hands with two kids, all smiling under a sunny sky. The man had Daniel's name written over it. Daddy. Charlotte woke early. She hadn't slept much, her mind replaying every kiss, every laugh, every tender word Daniel had whispered over the past 7 years. All of it now tainted, rewritten in her memory like a story she no longer recognized. The kettle hissed as she poured herself some tea. Her fingers trembled against the ceramic. Across the table sat the child's drawing. Daniel hadn't noticed it missing. He had left for work as usual, suit crisp, tie tight, lies thicker than ever. She waited an hour, then dressed in a simple black jumper and jeans. No makeup, no jewelry. She wasn't trying to make an impression. She just wanted the truth. As she parked across the street from Millgate Primary, her heart pounded in her chest. Children were being dropped off at the front gates. Laughter and small backpacks danced across the sidewalk. It felt like another world, one she didn't belong to. And then she saw her. Ava Saunders stood by the gate, crouched beside a little girl, tying her shoelaces. Charlotte recognized her instantly from the school blog. She was pretty in a soft, delicate way. Not threatening. Not flashy. The kind of woman you trust with your secrets, or your children. A little boy clung to Ava's arm, his backpack slipping off one shoulder. He looked exactly like Daniel. Charlotte had to grip the steering wheel to keep from gasping. Then it happened. Daniel appeared. Not a memory, not a photo, him in real time in the flesh. He was walking toward the school gates in jeans and a polo shirt. Not a suit. Not work attire. He scooped up the little girl and kissed her on the cheek. Charlotte's world stopped. He wasn't at work. He was playing house. Living a second life. He kissed Ava on the cheek casually like he'd done to Charlotte 1,000 times. The boy tugged on his arm, showing him something on his tablet. Daniel laughed, a real laugh, full and joyful. Charlotte's mouth went dry. She sat there for a full 15 minutes watching him with them. Watching her husband be someone else's partner. Someone else's father. When they finally disappeared inside the school, Charlotte started the car and drove away, but not home. She parked in a quiet cafe 2 blocks down, ordered black coffee, and opened her laptop. She wrote an email to herself with every detail she had uncovered. Screenshots, timelines, addresses. She backed it up to the cloud. Then she drafted a letter. A real one. Handwritten. She knew now that a direct confrontation would never work. Daniel was too clever, too rehearsed. He'd deny, manipulate, twist the narrative. No, she would build the case like a detective. Quietly. Patiently. And then she would blow his entire world apart in one strike. Charlotte sat on the edge of the bed that evening, staring at the wedding photo on the wall. Her fingers traced the glass frame as if touching it could help her remember when things started to shift. When had Daniel become someone she didn't recognize? She remembered the early years, the laughter, the endless nights talking about their future, the spontaneous getaways to the Lake District. He was everything she had ever wanted in a man. Driven, affectionate, and endlessly attentive. But now she wondered, was it all real? Or had she just been the other woman once too? The thought made her stomach twist. Charlotte pulled out an old diary from the nightstand, flipping to the year they got married, 2018. She skimmed her entries for clues, inconsistencies, red flags she might have missed. On April 14th, a note caught her eye. Daniel flew to Manchester again. Said it's for work, but he seemed distracted when he left. I hate when he shuts down like that. That was just 2 months before their wedding. Had Ava been in his life then? She opened her laptop and searched again. Ava Saunders had joined Millgate Primary in early 2016. There were mentions of school events, photos with the children, even one where Daniel had a baby girl strapped to his chest in a carrier. It was dated December 2017. Charlotte's blood ran cold. Their wedding was 6 months after that photo. That meant, not only had he been with Ava first, he'd had children with her before he married Charlotte. So she wasn't the betrayed wife. She was the second life. It reframed everything. Every romantic gesture, every business trip, every unexplained absence. They were all pieces of a life built on deceit. But one question still haunted her: why? Why keep two families? Why not leave one for the other? Why go through the effort of pretending, juggling birthdays and school plays and anniversary dinners like a madman on a tightrope? Control, maybe. Power. Or maybe Daniel had convinced himself he was doing the right thing by providing for both. But Charlotte wasn't interested in his justifications. Not anymore. She snapped a photo of the wedding picture and added it to the USB. Then she folded the letter she had written earlier, the one addressed to Ava. It read, "You don't know me, but we share something important. Daniel Evans. He's been living two lives, and you deserve the truth as much as I do." She included her number at the bottom. Tomorrow she would send it. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't anger, though she had plenty of that too. It was justice. Charlotte wasn't going to destroy Daniel's life out of spite. She was going to hand him the matches and let him burn it down himself. The next day, Charlotte waited outside Millgate Primary, envelope clutched in her hand. It was folded, sealed, and bore Ava's name in neat cursive. Her heart raced as she saw Ava exit the school gate around 4 p.m., holding her daughter's hand. Charlotte approached slowly, careful not to seem threatening. "Ava." The woman turned, slightly startled. "Yes." Charlotte hesitated. "I'm Charlotte Evans. I think we need to talk. It's about Daniel." Ava's face flickered. Confusion first, then something unreadable. She pulled her daughter closer. "What about Daniel?" Charlotte extended the envelope. "Please read this when you're alone. I know this is sudden, but it's important. And I promise I'm not lying." Ava hesitated, then took the envelope. Charlotte turned and walked away without another word, her legs trembling as she left. That night her phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Is this a joke?" Charlotte replied immediately. "No. I wish it were. Please call me when you're ready." 2 minutes later the phone rang. Ava's voice was cautious, clipped. "You're telling me Daniel married you in 2018? "Yes. But he was living with me. I had just had Sophie. We were talking about buying a house." Charlotte inhaled sharply. "I know. I've seen the photos." There was silence on the other end. Charlotte added, "He told me you were a client. He never mentioned children." "Never you." Ava's voice trembled now. "He said he worked late, that the firm sent him out of town. I believed him. I never thought." Charlotte closed her eyes. "Neither did I." They spoke for over an hour, swapping dates, stories, receipts, photos. Every minute, the puzzle pieces fell into place, confirming what both women feared. Daniel had been living a double life for over a decade. Ava sounded numb. "What now? What do we do?" Charlotte said, "We end it. Together." There was something calming in Ava's agreement. They weren't enemies. They were victims of the same man's twisted game. The next step was delicate. They couldn't just storm into his office or confront him on the street. Daniel was methodical, and if cornered, he'd find a way to spin it. They needed to catch him where he couldn't run, emotionally, legally, publicly. Charlotte had an idea. "Let's invite him to dinner." Ava was stunned. "What?" "Just trust me. We both invite him separately. Same night, same time. Your place. I'll already be there." A long pause followed. Then Ava said, "You're ruthless." Charlotte smiled bitterly. "I've been lied to for 7 years. I've earned it." Daniel returned home late that Friday, loosening his tie as he walked through the door. Charlotte greeted him with her usual soft smile, masking the storm beneath. "I was thinking," she began, casually plating his reheated dinner, "maybe we should have a date night next week." He glanced up, slightly surprised. "Yeah. Thursday," she said. "No phones, no clients. Just us." Daniel hesitated, calculating something behind his eyes. "Thursday's a bit tricky." Maybe Friday. Charlotte smiled tightly. Sure. Friday it is. He kissed her on the cheek and muttered a tired, "Thanks, babe." Meanwhile, across the city, Ava sat with her children coloring beside her, texting Daniel. "Been too long since we had dinner just us. Come by Friday. I'll cook your favorite." Daniel responded 10 minutes later. "Sounds perfect. Miss you." Charlotte met Ava the next morning at a cafe in Hammersmith. They planned every detail, down to the wine on the table, the exact minute Daniel usually arrived, and where Charlotte would be sitting when he walked through the door. "I'll be in the kitchen just out of sight," Charlotte said. "When he starts making himself at home, I'll come out." Ava bit her lip. What if he denies it all? Charlotte pulled out a folder. Inside were printouts, emails, photos, receipts, dates. "Then we remind him." On Friday, Charlotte packed an overnight bag under the guise of visiting a friend and kissed Daniel goodbye. "I'll be back Saturday morning," she said sweetly. "Love you." "Love you too," he replied, already scrolling through his phone. That evening she waited in Ava's flat, heart racing, hands ice cold. At exactly 7:03 p.m. the door opened. "Smells amazing," Daniel called out as he stepped in, shrugging off his jacket. He leaned down to kiss Ava, but she pulled back. "Let's sit first," she said. Daniel blinked. "Everything all right?" And then Charlotte stepped into view. Daniel turned pale. "Hi, darling," Charlotte said, voice like velvet. "You're early for our dinner." His mouth opened, closed. Nothing came out. The trap had been set. And now it was time to let it all unravel. Daniel stood frozen in Ava's living room, his gaze flicking between Charlotte and Ava like he'd walked into a nightmare. His lips parted, but no words came. Charlotte folded her arms. "Sit down." Ava's face was unreadable, but her fingers trembled as she pointed toward the couch. "Please, Daniel. We're not going to scream. We just want answers." Daniel slowly walked to the sofa, then sank into the cushion like his bones had turned to liquid. He ran a hand through his hair, eyes darting toward the front door, then the kitchen, as if calculating the fastest way to escape. "I can explain," he said finally. Charlotte let out a short, bitter laugh. "Oh good. We were so worried you wouldn't try." Ava sat across from him, holding a folder filled with printed evidence. "How long, Daniel?" His jaw clenched. "It's not what you think." "Oh, so you didn't marry me while raising children with another woman?" Charlotte snapped. He leaned forward, voice rising. "I didn't mean for this to happen. I love you both." Silence. Even the children's soft voices from the other room seemed to hush. "You love us both?" Ava repeated, her voice shaking. "Daniel, you built 2 lives. Lied to 2 women. Fathered children and then got married to someone else 6 months after Sophie was born. That's not love. That's insanity." Charlotte stepped closer, pulling out a photo from their wedding day. She held it up. "This was the day we said forever. Where were you the weekend before this?" Daniel hesitated. Charlotte continued. "You were at a playground with Liam. I found the timestamp. You gave your son a piggyback ride on Saturday and married me on Sunday." His head dropped into his hands. "I was trying to protect everyone," he murmured. "Don't," Ava warned. "Don't insult us with that excuse." Charlotte felt the fury bubbling beneath her skin, but she kept her voice cold and steady. "You're not going to explain your way out of this, Daniel. You're going to sit here and listen. You will not interrupt. You will not justify." She nodded at Ava, who opened the folder and began listing dates. Holidays he'd spent on business. Birthdays missed, events postponed. As Ava read, Charlotte added her own entries, overlapping timelines. Every lie was cross-referenced, every conference connected to a moment he was actually playing dad in another house. By the time they finished, Daniel's face had drained of all color. Charlotte leaned in. "You wanted control, didn't you? The perfect wife, the perfect family multiplied. But you weren't man enough to commit to either." He looked up, eyes hollow. "What do you want from me?" Ava stood, her voice low but firm. "Nothing. You've already taken enough." Charlotte added, "This isn't a negotiation. We're not here to scream or beg. We just want you to know. The secret is out." Daniel stared at them, defeated. But what he didn't know yet was that this was only the beginning. That night, Charlotte returned home. She stood in the hallway of the flat she once called her sanctuary, unsure whether to cry or collapse. The air felt heavier, the silence louder. She poured herself a glass of wine, sat on the floor, and replayed the confrontation in her mind. Daniel hadn't denied it, not really. His defenses had been weak, his lies half-hearted. But still, even now she saw it. The flicker of manipulation in his eyes, like he was trying to decide which version of himself to become in order to win them back. He wasn't sorry. He was exposed. The following morning he came home. Charlotte was already packed. "What's all this?" he asked, eyeing the suitcase by the door. She didn't look up from the table where she sat writing something. "You thought I'd stay?" Charlotte, listen to me. I know I messed up, but I can fix this." She rose slowly, letter in hand. "You're not fixing anything. You're not capable of fixing yourself, let alone a marriage." He stepped toward her. "Please just." "I'm done listening," she cut him off. "You don't get to make speeches now." Daniel's eyes darkened. "So what, you just leave?" She held out the letter. "This is notice that I'm filing for divorce. I've spoken to a solicitor. You'll receive the paperwork by end of week." He didn't take it. Instead, his voice turned cold. "You think you'll come out of this looking innocent? You think people won't ask questions? Gossip?" Charlotte blinked. There it was. The real Daniel. The man behind the charm. She smiled thinly. "Let them ask. I've got nothing to hide. You, on the other hand." He didn't reply. He turned, walked into the bedroom and slammed the door. Charlotte let the silence stretch, knowing he had no power over her anymore. She grabbed her suitcase and left. But she wasn't just leaving the flat. She was leaving a life built on lies. The story unraveled fast. 2 days after the confrontation, Charlotte posted a single photo online. The one of Daniel with Ava and the kids at the school fair. She added no caption. The comments exploded. Mutual friends messaged in confusion. Co-workers of Daniel's whispered behind office doors. Charlotte didn't respond to any of them. She let the silence speak for her. Meanwhile, Ava had contacted the school's HR and quietly informed them of the situation. Not to shame Daniel, but to protect her children. She feared the whispers would make their way into the classroom. The kids, thankfully, were too young to understand. But Daniel wasn't. And he felt the pressure closing in. He called Charlotte repeatedly. Left voicemails, some apologetic, some angry, some desperate. She listened to none of them. The solicitor had advised her to go no contact until the legal separation began. Ava kept her distance too, focusing on her children and leaning on a small circle of friends who rallied around her. One afternoon, Charlotte received an email from Daniel. "You've ruined my life. I've lost clients. I might lose my job. Are you happy now?" She stared at the screen for a long moment, then deleted it without replying. It wasn't about happiness. It was about truth. Daniel had lived too long under a mask, and now that it had cracked, he couldn't stand the light. Meanwhile, Charlotte began to feel lighter. There were still waves of grief, moments where she stared at old photos and wondered if any of it had been real. But there was also peace. She moved in temporarily with her sister in Brighton. The sea helped. So did the distance. For the first time in years, she felt like she could breathe. Charlotte's days blurred together in her sister's cozy seaside apartment. The salty breeze and crashing waves became a balm to the storm inside her. Yet, despite the calming surroundings, her mind was anything but quiet. The betrayal had shattered her world, but she was determined not to let it define her. She spent mornings walking along the beach, phone in hand, arranging meetings with therapists and solicitors. The paperwork for the divorce loomed over her, a necessary step to reclaim her life. Her conversations with Ava became more frequent and honest. They shared memories, good and bad, and leaned on each other for support. Ava confided how hard it was to explain the sudden absence of Daniel to their children. "They ask about him, and I don't have answers," she whispered during one call. Charlotte's heart ached. Both women had been pawns in a cruel game, and the innocent children were caught in the crossfire. One afternoon, Charlotte sat on the balcony, drafting a message she hoped she'd never send. It was addressed to Daniel, expressing all the pain, disappointment, and anger she felt. She typed, deleted, and retyped it, struggling to find words that could convey what simple sentences could not. She didn't want closure from him, she wanted freedom. The days grew heavier as Daniel's attempts to contact her continued, but Charlotte remained steadfast. She told herself this distance was necessary for healing. Meanwhile, her friends noticed the change. Emma, her best friend since university, insisted on weekly visits and shopping trips, distracting Charlotte from the dark thoughts threatening to consume her. "I know you'll get through this," Emma said, squeezing her hand. "You're stronger than you think." Charlotte nodded, letting herself believe it for the first time. Daniel's carefully constructed facade began to crumble beyond the walls of his personal life. Rumors spread quickly within his office, fueled by whispers and shared screenshots of Charlotte's social media posts. The financial firm, wary of the scandal, started distancing itself. A once promising career was unraveling fast. Daniel found himself isolated. Calls from clients dwindled. Colleagues avoided his gaze. The man who once thrived on control now stumbled through days with haunted eyes. One evening, after a particularly harsh meeting with his manager, Daniel sat alone in his flat, scrolling through messages from Charlotte and Ava, none of which he dared to reply to. His phone buzzed. It was his lawyer. "We need to talk," the voice said gravely. "The divorce proceedings are moving faster than you anticipated. And the custody of the children is complicated." Daniel realized, maybe for the first time, that his double life had come at a steep cost. The security, the respect, the trust, all lost. But even in his lowest moments, a flicker of arrogance remained. He believed he could manipulate the situation to his advantage, but the evidence Charlotte and Ava had gathered was airtight. The reality was clear. Daniel's empire was collapsing. While Daniel spiraled, Charlotte and Ava forged a new bond. One rooted in shared pain but also hope. They met regularly, discussing not just legal strategies but dreams for their futures. They talked about the children, vowing to provide them love and stability despite Daniel's failings. One sunny afternoon, Charlotte visited Ava's home. The children played nearby, laughter piercing the tension like rays of light. Ava looked at Charlotte with gratitude. "Thank you for standing with me. For not letting him win." Charlotte smiled softly. "We're stronger together. We can rebuild." They began co-parenting plans, consulting lawyers to ensure the kids' best interests were protected. It was complicated, but it was necessary. In their unity, Charlotte found purpose. The pain of betrayal was still raw, but it was now tempered by friendship and resolve. As Charlotte watched the children playing, she realized this wasn't just an ending. It was a new beginning for her, for Ava, and for the children who deserved more than secrets. The courtroom was colder than Charlotte expected. Rows of unfamiliar faces surrounded her. Lawyers, judges, and onlookers. Yet amid the sterile environment, Charlotte felt a strange sense of calm. Daniel sat across from her, his expression a mixture of defeat and anger. He looked older, worn down by his own deceit. The judge reviewed the evidence, photographs, emails, school records, and testimonies from both Charlotte and Ava. Each piece chipped away at the illusion Daniel had built for years. When it was his turn to speak, Daniel's voice trembled. He offered half-hearted apologies, but the damage was irreparable. The judge ruled in favor of Charlotte and Ava, granting them custody arrangements and financial support. Daniel's rights were limited, a painful but necessary measure to protect the children. Charlotte felt a bittersweet victory. Justice had been served, but the wounds remained. As the session ended, Charlotte caught Ava's eye. They exchanged a look that said everything: pain, resilience, and hope. Back home, Charlotte unpacked her bags, finally ready to reclaim her life. The journey ahead was uncertain, but she was no longer afraid. She started therapy, confronting the betrayal and rebuilding her trust in herself. Friends and family rallied around her, reminding her of her strength. Ava kept in touch, sharing updates on the children, slowly healing the fractures Daniel's lies had caused. Together, they found solace in their shared experiences and new beginnings. Months later, Charlotte stood on a cliff overlooking the ocean, the wind tousling her hair. The necklace Daniel had gifted her years ago hung around her neck, a reminder of a past she had survived. She smiled, not because she had forgotten but because she had grown. Her phone buzzed. A message from Ava. "Dinner next week? For us and the kids." Charlotte typed back. "Looking forward to it." The future was uncertain, but for the first time it was hers to shape.